Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's podcast is renowned concert pianist Sasha Kasman Laude. She's a finalist for the American Pianist Association Awards. You are listening to Sasha Kasman Laude performing an excerpt Bach's Sonata in G minor. Join me now as I go on the aisle in a conversation with Sasha. Thank you, Sasha, for being on my podcast. It's a delight to meet you.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's my pleasure to be here.
And where are you at this moment?
I am somewhere in Indianapolis.
Okay.
I'm not too familiar yet with the geography of the city, but I'm being hosted by a wonderful host family that's part of the American Pianist Awards board. And yeah, I'm delighted to be here. And it's more humid than I'm used to in Utah, which is a nod back to my upbringing in Birmingham, Alabama. So my hair feels like it's at home.
I have a lot of friends who deal with what they call their frizz, their frizzy hair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's tell our listeners why you are in Indianapolis.
So I'm here for the Discovery Series of the American Piano Awards. This competition lasts 13 months, and I've already been here in November, where I played a solo recital, and I played with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. And this week is the culmination of it all. It's the finals. I'm playing with the Dover Quartet. I'm premiering a new work by composer Brittany J. Green, and I'm playing with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. I'm starstruck to be playing with Joanne Falletta. I'm going to do Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto. So lots of performing this week, lots of exciting music making, seeing people that I've grown to care for and know through APA and through just the music that connects us all. And also, it's wonderful to see my fellow competitors. There's 5 of us, and the music world is very small, so we all know each other.
Okay, so tell us about the American Pianist Association, or the APA as it's known.
Yeah, so the APA is an organization that promotes American pianists, and they alternate every 2 years between classical and jazz. So 2 years ago it was jazz, and this year it's classical, and I found out that I was chosen to be a finalist. There's 5 finalists. I found out last year, almost about exactly a year ago. And you submit materials blind, and they are evaluated blindly by professionals in the field. And you can't actually just apply. You have to be nominated in order to apply. So I was fortunate to be nominated last time, so 4 years ago. I applied and did not get in. And then this time around, I was nominated again. And I was kind of in a different situation. 4 years ago, I was still a grad student. And this time around, I have a full-time job. I'm a assistant professor of piano at Utah State University, and my full-time job is teaching other people how to play the piano and practice. So doing it myself, I wouldn't say kind of fell by the wayside, but I definitely shifted my focus and my priorities a little bit since, being a full-time concert pianist and performing myself and putting all of my energy into myself. So now I feel like I have two full-time jobs. And so I decided to apply again. And I really didn't have high hopes because, I got rejected once. And it was a huge shock and an honor to find out that I was a finalist and to find out who the other finalists were, that I'm in such amazing company. And so this year, honestly, has been a really wonderful opportunity to return to experimenting with repertoire, which I've always done. And I got to perform some of my own transcriptions. Something I really love about APA is the freedom that you have in selecting repertoire. Chris Williams, the director, he's very encouraging of all of us to play what we want and to play what we feel like best showcases our personalities, our musical tastes, and what makes us really shine on stage and communicate most effectively.
What would you say your personality is and your style and your taste?
I would say I value in performance vividness. I value something that makes an impact, that makes an impression, whether for a seasoned musician, concert goer, or someone who is in the hall for the first time. I value the music speaking first and foremost. So when I choose repertoire, I really value the music being able to speak for itself first. And for me to bring in my own view on it to be kind of the cherry on top rather than competing with the music itself.
Mhm. Your playing has been described as powerful and vivid. So that sort of seems to, based on your own description of your work, it seems to be a sort of a general feedback that you receive about what you play.
Well, I hope that it comes across. We have intentions and we have hopes that the audience will accept what we are trying to transmit. you
Yeah.
know so it's always nice to receive feedback that's affirming of what
Yes.
I'm going for.
Well, I mean, you're probably like every other artist. When you put work out there, you have to let the chips fall where they may, right? It's a very harrowing
Absolutely.
process, right?
It is, and especially if you are putting out something that's not often played, so something that's new for audiences' ears, new for really for all of their senses. I did some weird programming last time around, and I definitely was nervous about how it would be perceived. And I think in those kinds of situations, if you're playing new music, if you're playing, if you're taking some kind of risk, the most important thing you can do is to be convinced yourself. And if you're
Mhm.
not convinced yourself, at least fake it.
I see in your bio that you really like the newer composers, new works, right?
I do.
And tell me why.
Well, I've had some really wonderful experiences working with living composers. These
Mm.
people became my friends, or they started out my friends, and then I played their music. And it's an amazing experience to be able to talk to the person who made the music. And in real time, you can ask them, hey, what was your intention here? Can you change this to be a little bit easier, more comfortable, whatever. And composers, for the most part, I've actually never encountered a composer who was too protective of their own work. I think that the best composers, especially contemporary ones, they understand that their music, once it's written down, it has its own life a little bit,
Mhm.
and they no longer own it 100%. It's now also the borrowed intellectual property by whoever is performing it.
Mhm.
And I found that the best composers are very open to their music being not adapted, but, you know, able to be transformed a little bit to fit the person who's
So they're not precious about it. They're not
they're
like
really not. They're really not.
protective and territorial and all that.
No, they're very open, and I think they appreciate when, a strong performer has ideas to breathe life into what they've written.
I bet too, on some level, they love the fact that perhaps the pianist has found something that they haven't, and it's sort of like, enhanced what they wrote.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And if you consider, especially commission pieces that are written for competitions where
Yes.
there's like 12 people playing them or 20 people playing them, and the composer gets to hear 20 very different interpretations of their
Oh,
piece. I mean, if I was a composer and got to hear that, I would be just over the moon. Um,
yes.
Funny enough, one of the classes that I'm teaching this semester at USU is a special topics course in performing contemporary piano music. So it couldn't be more relevant to what I'm doing at APA.
Wow.
And our students, they took a model composition class last semester, so they, it's not that they, wrote a piece from scratch, but they were, inspired by a piece of music from the 20th century, and they had to write their own piece based on elements from the model composition. And
Hmm.
it was so much fun for me to not only help kind of polish and finish these compositions that these students wrote. Many of them were composing for the first time ever and never even considered themselves composers. But then also to get them to perform these pieces in a convincing way. And that's almost, I think, harder than writing something, because after you write something, it's still just notes on a page, it's still dead, so to speak. It can only be brought to life by a convincing rendition. And sometimes composers themselves who perform their own works can be distracted by details or blinded by their own, by things that they're concerned with that don't actually matter on stage in other
It
things.
can't really be objective, right? So,
Yes, yes. And so it's my job to tell this sensitive composer, what if you tried, I have to do the audacious thing of telling them how to play their own music or
uh-huh.
suggest what to do. And I always phrase it in a very, in a suggestive way. You could try this. This
Mhm.
might be convincing. You can try it out. And 9 times out of 10, they will take the advice.
Isn't that the wonderful thing about true artistic collaboration?
Absolutely. There has to be an openness. It's important to have convictions, to have strong opinions that are backed up by something, that you can justify and verbalize or perform very convincingly so that no one has any doubts of what you're trying to do. But it's also important to at least have the door open, to have it cracked so that another perspective can at least have the opportunity to come in. Because if you close that door, then the air can become stale.
It makes me think about my own position as a writer and also as a broadcaster that I've had some really, really excellent editors over my career, and they always make me look better.
There we go. We all need a second look. That's one thing I've a little bit missed from finishing grad school, is that I don't really have a teacher anymore. I'm my own teacher.
You're harder on yourself than anybody could possibly be, of course, right?
That's true, but I also don't see everything. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm lucky to be married to a pianist. In
Yeah.
this regard, I'm lucky that I can always play for him. And he has
Yeah.
very, very
So
polar musical taste from me.
does that mean that you read your reviews and take them into account?
I would say yes. I think that if you are producing something that the audience isn't getting or isn't receiving the way you want, I think it's wiser to take that into account at least a little bit than to ignore it completely,
Yeah.
especially if you are quote unquote emerging. I don't even know what emerging artist applies to anymore in terms of age, but if you're still trying to find your thing, I
Hmm.
think it's important to listen to those who are more experienced than you, wiser. Now, it doesn't apply maybe to all critics, I would dare to say, but good critique, well written, well thought out things are always useful.
So, how long have you been playing the piano?
I've been playing the piano since, well, practically since I was a baby. I think I first started learning simple songs when I was 3, when I could, sit up at the piano and press the keys. I started lessons a little bit later than that. I started when I was 6 because, well, my mom started teaching me. And I think it's always tricky to teach your own kid in terms of, patience and
She's a musician, I take it.
yes, both of my parents are pianists, and my sister's a
Oh
pianist, and I
my.
married a pianist. So none of
Wow.
us have any imagination.
Totally in your blood. Totally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like you were born in a trunk, right? I mean, it's surrounded you. Okay, so 6 years old. And at the time, were you considered like a prodigy, perhaps?
Oh, definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not. In fact, my parents, I think they made a point to remind me that I was not a prodigy and that I did need to work hard. And I think I definitely had talent, especially like my ear. I had perfect pitch. I could remember music really well. I could pick out notes and chords and recreate them. I could play by ear. But I think as a pianist, I was not naturally drawn to practicing. I only learned really to practice pretty recently in the last probably 5 years.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Oh, well, because I left my parents' home and then I had no one to force me to practice. And I realized that if I don't force myself, then
Ah,
it's use it or lose it. So number one, I got really efficient because I teach and
yeah,
I always find it easier. I mean, maybe this is all of us that it's easier to tell someone else what to do than to apply it to yourself.
yeah.
But I think I figured out how to practice by seeing other students, like my students, so some deficiencies, how they could fix deficiencies in their playing or
How
how to
interesting.
improve pieces. So
You
then I could
learn
apply it to myself.
that you learn from your students that way. That's really,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
Let's take a break and listen to Sasha performing Mettner's Sonata in F minor. Okay, tell me about your training.
So I grew up just studying with my parents, and when I was 11, I switched over from my mom to my dad. So essentially, that just meant taking lessons in a different room in our house. And my dad taught me until I was 22. I actually ended up going to college and studied with him. So at University of Alabama at Birmingham, which is where my dad's a professor. And then I went to New York and I was at Juilliard with Robert McDonald. So that was for 2 years. And then I did my doctorate at University of Michigan and I studied with Logan Skelton. So
Wow.
three very different teachers.
Of course, Juilliard, I recently had the honor of interviewing Drew Peterson.
Yeah,
And
we had the same teacher.
we talked about Juilliard, and I asked him, so for you, did it live up to its reputation? And he said it certainly did in all kinds of ways. But he said that it has its detractors, people who went there and so on and so forth. But according to the general world, their brand is known for its excellence. So would you agree? Was that your experience?
I would agree with that. I think everyone has obviously, their own unique experience. Mine was that I came from a small town. I mean, Birmingham, Alabama is not, there are smaller towns than that, but I was definitely a big fish in a small pond in undergrad. And going from that to Juilliard, where everyone
I can.
around me is amazing, speaks, three, four languages.
That had to have been intimidating, huh?
It was definitely intimidating. And I had really bad imposter syndrome. I had a really hard time believing my teacher when he said nice things to me, when he complimented my playing, because like my first instinct was, oh, okay, so either he can't hear my flaws or he doesn't care about me. So because I grew up with the mentality that if someone really cares about you, then they're going to critique every microgram of sound that comes out of you, and they're going to critique everything about you up and down. And if they say anything nice, it's why would they do that? Like
Ah,
I didn't understand why people complimented each other because that's a waste of time, you know? And so when I realized, when it finally clicked that compliments actually do things like build up a performer's confidence and make it possible for someone to become their own person and not just,
so what was your father and mother's approach?
um, I would say that their approach was definitely very intense. And I totally get it. I totally understand it because I'm also a very intense person. And when I teach, I find myself having to not hold back, but remember and remind myself that things take time, that if something is obvious to me, I have to think about the way that I communicate. And ultimately, the end result should be that the student receives the information and is able to digest it. If there are obstacles there, if there are barriers to the digestion and to the communication, then it doesn't matter how right I am. It doesn't matter how genius my ideas are and, what I can
So
bring to
it's
the
how you
table.
deliver it. You have to maybe soften things a bit.
Exactly. And you also have to be a good psychologist and understand the person you're talking to, what motivates them, what works, what doesn't, because everyone's very different. And I think I grew up with an approach that was very, like, obviously hugely beneficial to me. I'm totally indebted to my parents for the sheer
Sure.
amount of time and energy that they put into me, that they believed in me so much
Mhm.
that I feel like my dad just dedicated a chunk of his life and of his soul to
Well,
raising me as a musician. And that's incredible. I wouldn't be a
yeah.
quarter of the musician I am
Well,
without
the
without
proof
him.
is in the pudding. I'm sure that they must be incredibly proud of you and the fact that you're in this competition. Are
I
they
hope so.
are they coming to Indianapolis? Are they there?
Oh, they unfortunately can't make it. They're both very busy teaching,
Mhm.
and which I totally get because I inherited the teaching bug from them and I watched them teach my whole life. Our house was a revolving door of students, and
Mhm.
I heard my dad practicing all the time. I learned so much repertoire just through osmosis, through listening to, my parents work with their students on it.
Yeah,
And I'm the same way with my students. Even this week, while I'm gone, I'm still listening to students remotely and coaching them. They all have performances coming up. It's
yeah.
competition season. So yeah, they will be cheering on from afar.
So let's get back to the music. You love performing new composers. What about the old war horses? What about the classical repertoire?
The classical repertoire is, well, it's the foundation. It has to be present. It's funny because I think as I was growing up as a young pianist, I don't know that I really studied the war horses and the classical repertoire as thoroughly as I did some of the other pieces I performed. And I think it's because I already was around them. I already heard them all the time. I put my fingers on them. I would read through pieces. I would play them by ear. But there was this sense of, oh, well, everyone's playing these pieces. You'll get around to them. You already know how they go. Why perform them publicly? And let's focus on repertoire that isn't as often performed or new pieces. And that's not to say that I didn't play any standard repertoire. Of course I did. But I think from a young age, I was actually steered towards works that weren't as often played. And I'm actually really glad that I did that because,
Mhm.
for example, the composer Nikolai Metner, whose quintet I will play on Thursday and whose music has actually been heard at APA a whole bunch of times. The last APA classical winner was Kenny Broberg, who famously plays a lot of Metner. But when I was a young teenager and I was performing full recitals of his music, even then, like 16 years ago, not everyone knew who this composer was. And it was something that was under the radar. So I actually felt like I had to believe in this music 10 times as much as any standard rep because the audience was not primed for it. The audience was not primed to listen for it, and it's complex music. It usually takes one or two listens, or excuse me, two or three listens to grasp a piece of Metner. Something by Rachmaninoff, on the other hand, they lived at the same time, they were best friends. Their music has a lot of overlap. Rachmaninoff, I feel like you instantly understand what's going on. The tune is there, the structure's there, and Metner, there's a little bit more digging you have to do under the surface. So as a performer, I feel like I have to do extra work to be as convincing as possible so that from the first listen, people get it, people like it, people want to go and hear more. And I remember when I came in November, I played a couple of Metner's pieces and I dedicated a chunk of my speaking time in my performance to explaining who the heck he was and explaining a little bit about his music. So for me, that's a very personal and sensitive subject to play repertoire that's not so well known because it has to be that much more vivid and convincing and well thought out for people to like it and to get it.
Mhm. So tell me, as far as classical music is concerned, though, who are some of your favorite composers?
The standard answer is, whatever you're working on in the current moment.
Mhm.
But I would be a little bit broader, and I'm comfortable saying that late 19th century, early 20th century Russian Soviet composers are, I feel like they're kind of my comfort zone. I don't know how to explain it other than when I listen to music of Scriabin, of Rachmaninoff, of Metner, even of Tchaikovsky, who was earlier, I feel like it's a language that I understand without any barriers. I feel like I
What is your culture
understand what's being said.
What is your cultural background? Where are your people from? Your ancestors?
That's exactly where they're from. They're
Okay, well,
I
there's
was
a
born in Moscow. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, there you
Yeah. There I
yeah.
have it. And it's funny, I've talked about this with some of my colleagues, especially those who didn't grow up in musical families maybe, that when they first encountered Prokofiev and Scriabin when maybe they were in their teens, that it took some time to understand that
Mm.
slightly less than tonal language to understand that sarcasm in the music and
And again, one more thing, it's in your blood, right? You know,
and it's in my blood and I also grew up listening to it. My dad practiced it all the
I
time.
have to tell
So
you,
yeah.
the other night I attended a performance of the Indianapolis Symphony and the Indianapolis Ballet. And they did a collaboration on Swan Lake, Tchaikovsky's score that everyone knows. And the place was packed to the hill. And the dancers, many of them have trained in Russia, so on and so forth. But it was like an all Russian night, these two art forms. And I mean, I was in total heaven. And
I wish I was there. Oh man, I'm
that
such a ballet nut.
that score, I mean, oh, yeah, it was, but I digress. So yeah, of course you would love Russian music. So have you performed over there?
I have, yes, not a lot, but I have performed and was greeted very warmly.
Wow, do you have
Um,
relatives over there?
yes, honestly, all of my family is there.
Oh,
I
wow.
think I have like one or two
Well, it
more
sounds like
distant family members in the US.
sounds like you were destined to be a concert pianist, for God's sake.
Oh man, I don't know about destined, but I do know what makes me tick, what I can't live without, and that is making music, making art. I think I would go crazy if I didn't have that.
Someone once said, and I love this quote, an artist said, if I don't make art every single day, I am depressed.
Yep,
I
I can
think
relate
there's
to that.
a lot of truth to that, right?
Definitely.
Do you ever relax and play, great American songbook stuff or Broadway or anything like that?
Absolutely. You
Oh,
know,
good.
so those two that you named, probably less so. I had a weird cultural upbringing in terms of pop culture. I grew up watching Soviet movies and Soviet cartoons from my parents' generation because I don't know, they worked really hard to keep the language after we emigrated, and I'm really grateful for that. So I actually didn't grow up with that much exposure to American pop culture in terms of films and in terms of songs.
I see.
And so I have this weird anachronistic pop culture background that very, very few people my age do. In fact, I had this wonderful group of friends when I was at U Michigan. I had this wonderful group of friends of international students who came from Russia, right? And when I spoke to them, they told me that my Russian is a little bit anachronistic, is that it sounds a little bit older. I don't use a
Really?
lot of current slang. And that combined with the fact that I only know, movies that their parents grew up with or their grandparents even made me this like very young grandmother, or
Uh,
that's how they described me. So
yeah, yeah. So how familiar are you with, do you have many ties to Indianapolis?
honestly, apart from APA, I've only been to, I Bloomington is not too far from here. My
No,
sister
it's an hour away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my sister studied at Jacobs, and
Oh, wow.
I came down there several times. But Indianapolis is honestly such a wonderful city. I find it kind of similar to Birmingham in the sense that Birmingham, Alabama also has a rich and kind of tumultuous history, and in the past 10, 20 years, it's been trying to revitalize the downtown. It's been trying to become, a hopping food scene and
Sure.
this kind of blue spot in a sea of red. And it kind of seems like Indy is what
It's
Birmingham
exactly
is trying
that.
to be.
Bloomington
Yeah.
and Indy, we are, again, blue in a very red environment. So here's the thing about Drew. When I talked with him, he mentioned that one of the reasons that I'm going to get into this with you, the value of entering a competition. It's obvious to many people, but to those who aren't familiar with this process, what is the value of being in this awards competition?
The value is immense. It's exposure. It's the opportunity to demonstrate, to show yourself, not just in front of audiences in a new place, like the huge audiences that support APA, but also to play for professionals, for judges who have a say in the future of a young person's career. Really, it all comes down to having having a platform that can then lead to places you wouldn't even imagine, including and not limited to a real performing career. And competitions are often, well, they're by definition not fair, right? There's a pianist, Seymour Bernstein, who says that by today's standards, the level of piano playing is so high that you take any major competition around the world and you take the six finalists and they all should be awarded first place equally because the level is just that high, and it comes down maybe to personal taste, or someone
Mhm.
ate a bad burrito in the morning and then like played slightly less successfully in the evening, or someone heard a pianist before lunch versus after lunch, right? So you're hangry and then you're pleasantly sleepy. So these kinds of
Yeah.
factors, they're very human. They affect how we listen.
Actually, that's good for maybe someone who's listening who's never attended this kind of event. For general audiences to know that, folks, you're basically going to hear people who are at an equal playing field in terms of their talent, their experience, and all of that. And there's just like nanoseconds difference between their abilities. Would you say that's correct? So they're going to hear whoever they're going to hear something excellent.
Absolutely. And you say that, everyone's equal on the playing field. Well, we're actually all very different ages. We have different experiences. A lot of us attended the same schools, but for example, I have been teaching full time for 2 years, whereas maybe the other four pianists have been playing a lot more, and
I was speaking more of talent level. Talent.
oh, talent level, absolutely. Especially when going through blind auditions, that has to only be the
Mhm.
sound and only be the level of pianism and the ideas that are delivered and that
Mhm.
come across. So when a blind jury picks five finalists, I found I was very honored to be chosen and to
Yeah.
be among these five. But also everyone plays slightly different repertoire. There's of course the commission works that we're all playing that lets the judges compare apples to apples.
Mhm.
But with different pieces it comes down to professional judges getting what they get from the performance. Was it moving? Was it exciting? Do I want to pay money to go hear it again? I've been judging some competitions lately myself. And so to be on the other side of the table, you realize how much bias there is, even if it's actively being suppressed and accounted for with fairness. I hear it in my own instincts, because I'm also a performer and I also have strong opinions and feelings.
Does that give you perhaps a bit more empathy or compassion for the pianist, the musician?
100%. 100,000%. And
Well,
also being a teacher is helping as well.
let's pause again to hear Sasha play Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor. I refer back to Drew. One thing, by the way, for those who don't know who I'm talking about, Drew won the 2017 APA Classical Finalist Award. And he talked about also the other benefits of the awards were a potential recording contract, an appearance with the Indianapolis Symphony, I think. There's money involved. But he also talked about the exposure to markets that you may not have access to or performed in. And he talked about the Midwest. He consciously went there hoping to win because he would get to be known. He wasn't known in the Midwest. And we talked about Indy and Bloomington for you. So if you win, it's a natural thing that you're going to be exposed to the entire Midwest, hopefully, right?
Right. I mean, it would be a pleasure and an honor to perform more in the Midwest. I mean, there's so many really stunning world-class ensembles. There's very educated audiences in cities all over the Midwest, Chicago probably being the biggest one. But
Yeah.
Indianapolis is also a famously musical city. It's the home of one of the most prestigious violin competitions in the world.
Mhm.
It's all of the people that I've met here are wonderfully diverse and at the same time all interested in different kinds of art. That's all the people that I've met. Everyone is interested in all kinds of art. And I think that that's also the future of classical music
Uh-huh.
is intersection and interdisciplinary collaborations. That's something I'm very interested in. Like I mentioned, I am obsessed with ballet. I'm also a big theater nerd. And even though I don't have maybe so much experience and personal talent in those fields, I do feel like I have taste and I have ideas. And I certainly refer to movement and to speech and acting when I'm teaching and when I'm also refining my own performances.
Thank you for that commercial of approval for Indianapolis, Indiana. I try to get my guests to go there because my podcast is heard all over the country. I'm widening my audience because I want people to know that Indianapolis is a hub, actually.
Absolutely.
We've got an opera, we've got a ballet, we've got a symphony, we've got lots of theater. But my point is also that good art is made everywhere, including the heartland. So
Bingo.
that's it's wonderful that you say those things and that I didn't manipulate you into
You
saying
did
them.
not.
Well, that's quite wonderful. Okay, so the nuts and bolts. So what are you going to be doing this week? Talk about your activities.
So on Wednesday night, there are two performances at the Jazz Kitchen, which I'm told is a very cool venue, and I've
Very
seen some
cool.
photos.
Very
Very
cool.
excited.
Mhm.
So there's two evening
Did
performances.
you
I'm not.
know that Indy had a jazz tradition, that there used to be like a Black Harlem kind of neighborhood and a lot of famous musicians came out of there? Did you
You
know
know,
that?
I was not familiar with that, but I'm
Indiana Avenue.
here
And
to learn more.
Madam Walker, Madam C.J. Walker, her daughter built her company headquarters on Indiana Avenue. So it was the center of Black life, and they call it the Harlem of Indianapolis. So you
Hmm.
have to check it out while you're here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did know about Madam C.J. Walker, but yeah, I definitely need to learn even more. So on Thursday, then I'm playing my noontime concert where I premiere Brittany J. Green's part of her Daffodil Suite, which is a commissioned work for the competition.
Where will we
Then
be performing that?
I believe that's at Christchurch Cathedral.
Great, on this circle right near Hilbert Circle Theater.
Yes. Then I get to play Metner Piano Quintet with the esteemed Dover Quartet. And I just heard them actually come to Logan, Utah, where I live and where I work, just last month, and they were absolutely phenomenal. They blew everyone away. So I'm ecstatic that I get to play with such a high level ensemble. And then everything for me culminates on Saturday night, and that's also the last night of the competition, the last night of the finals. I'm playing Rachmaninoff's Third Concerto with Joanne Falletta and the Indianapolis Symphony.
That's the night that I'm attending, it's Saturday night.
Great.
Well, that's,
Rachmaninoff, he's going to tear down the house. You know, that piece, apart from being just a really great competition
oh
piece,
yeah.
it's very special to me. I'm glad I learned it when I did. I was still a
What's the
teenager
title
when
of
I
the piece?
learned it.
What's the
I'm
title? What is,
Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto.
okay. Wow, that's very exciting for you. Thank you so much. I know you must have a crazy schedule this week. Are you going to get to see any of India at all while you're here?
I hope so. My husband's coming to town to cheer me on Wednesday night, and on Friday, I think I'll have some time and maybe we'll hit up a museum and just see a little bit more of the city. But, you know, hopefully I'll have even more opportunities to come back in the future. This
You
is
know,
really a city I've fallen in love with.
I have many Russian friends here who are in ballet. I ran briefly a ballet company, and most of the dancers,
Wow.
many of the dancers were immigrants, and many of them trained in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and they performed at the Kirov and Bolshoi. And I have a friend here. I'll have to let her know. She runs a school, and most of the teachers are Russian, the old Russian style. And
Incredible. Maybe I can spend my Friday afternoon creeping on a ballet lesson. I would love to just
well,
I just love being around dancers because I was never a very good one.
let's talk offline, and I can make that happen.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that would actually be amazing.
You might get an authentic Russian meal out of it. Who knows?
Oh, oh man. That would be so fun. But also,
Well,
yeah, I would love for them to come. I'm playing so much Russian music this
oh
week.
yeah, that's another reason why I want to put them. Actually, I can drop the name. She started this company. Her name is Aloyna, and if I try to pronounce her last name, I'm going to butcher it, so I won't. But she runs the Indiana Ballet Conservatory. Her students come from all over the country, and they win award after award after award. They do a spectacular Nutcracker, and it's the Russian training that they get, that these dancers, you
You know
know.
what, Tom? I just realized. So the concerts on Wednesday, the Jazz Kitchen ones, they're a little bit more informal. They're actually dance themed. I completely forgot. They're
Oh,
dance
wow.
themed. And so all five of us are playing 10 minutes of dance themed music, and I'm playing three pieces from Romeo and Juliet by Prokofiev.
Wow. Well, we can talk
It
about
couldn't
this.
be more perfect.
Before we take our leave, listen to Sasha perform an excerpt of Ravel's Menuet au Tambour de Couperin. Thank you so much, Sasha. I know this is a busy week for you, and I value your time. I appreciate your giving me this time to talk about your career in the finals. So I wish you great luck, and I look forward to seeing you. I'll be right there on the aisle. Okay?
Thank you so much, Tom. This was a pleasure.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official neighborhood newsletter for 16 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.